I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you to everyone who was able to carve out a few minutes today to be with us. We really appreciate it. My name's Steve Allegrezza. I'm the Executive Director here at IHFRA. Quick housekeeping for anyone that's wanted to be here, couldn't be here, we are or need to jump out early. We will be recording this. We'll send that out as soon as we can get this uploaded to our YouTube page and on the site. So we'll send out a recording and a recap and Steve's information here. Another quick thing to call out is that we will be having like a live Q&A at the end of this session. So during the presentation, you can certainly drop your questions in the chat and Steve will try to address them as we can, or certainly before we finish today. So feel free to ask your questions as they come to mind. So that being said, the reason for why we're here, there is so much noise in the market right now. Everything going on with tariffs, all the pricing pressure that it's created, shifting supply chains. And I don't know about you, but where I sit, it's a bit overwhelming, and I'm doing my best to keep up. I'm sure we all are. So our goal today is pretty simple: try to cut through the noise. Focus on what actually matters and what's happening, and most importantly, what we could all be doing now, or certainly educating our customers on what they could be doing now. Because this isn't really a policy conversation anymore. This is impacting pricing, margin, and conversations that happen every day between the reps and their retail partners. Which is why we wanted to bring in someone who lives in this fun and exciting world every day. So joining us today is Steve Fodor, founder and CEO of Custom Services and Solutions. Steve is a licensed customs broker and master custom specialist, works directly with companies who are navigating the tariff situation, compliance issues, and duty recovery strategies in real time. So if there is anyone who can simplify this, simplify what's happening and help us understand what actually matters, it's Steve. So we really appreciate you being here today, Steve. We'll jump right in. And I figured we can start high level. Give us the 30,000 foot view. Where do things stand today? What's changed recently? And that businesses need to understand.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us today. And Steve, I appreciate the introduction. I've been at this for 42 years, 1984. I think Van Halen had a song maybe even at that time, but I've been in the industry that long. I've never seen a period of time as I've seen in the last 14 months or so. I think we've all understand the challenges we face with the tariffs. And I think the biggest challenge most companies have mentioned to me that they're facing is the fact that there's so much uncertainty. So a tariff is here today, gone tomorrow. Some are limited, they're stacking. There's just so many moving parts. And when I give information to a customer, it used to be I could give them advice, and that advice would probably be valid for a good period of time. Now I tell people, the advice I'm giving you is valid at this moment in time on this date. It can change that quickly. So I'd like to touch on a couple things that I think will be of interest to everybody. I think the first and probably the hottest item right now is the IEEPA tariffs. So the IEEPA tariffs, a lot of people knew them as the reciprocal tariffs. Those tariffs took effect April 2nd of 2025 and applied to all types of products from practically every country of origin. So you had this additional tariff, and it changed over time. There was a general IEEPA tariff, then it became specific to the country of origin and even changed during that time. The Supreme Court ruled back in February that those tariffs were not constitutional and set them aside. A few days later, Customs removed those tariffs from their system, so they no longer had to be paid. But the big question has become, and the question I get asked pretty much 7 days a week, is what about the $160 to $180 billion that was collected since last April? how do I get my share of that money back? And that's the hot topic. So we'll touch on that a little bit today, but also a few other things, other tariff issues that might have impacted your company. Possibly about the metals tariffs. So items made of steel and aluminum, copper, upholstered furniture. There's been an additional tariff outside of the IEEPA tariffs that has been assessed against a number of those products. And those tariffs have been shifting and changing over the last year plus. And then there's also talk of potentially new tariffs coming into place later this year. Probably, I'm hearing June or July, we should get some sort of announcements. We don't know where that's going. We don't know what products will be impacted or even what countries. We just know there are a couple of investigations ongoing right now at the U.S. Trade Rep's office. So those are the topics I want to touch on today. I guess that was a 30,000-foot view. It might have been a little bigger than that, but we'll kind of cover those as we move forward. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. And there's a lot to cover, so we appreciate you breaking it down for us. So let's start with the present. What do we do now? So from your perspective, what should companies be doing right now to protect themselves? What are the opportunities that have presented themselves through this? Talk to us about the ACE portal and what everyone should be doing right now.
Well, Customs, of course, CBP, if you will, is a government agency, and government agencies love acronyms. So I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms out. I talked about IEEPA. That's not really a word. It's an acronym, IEEPA. You mentioned ACE. ACE is an acronym as well, ACE. So we have all this terminology that's thrown out there, but let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of everything. And Steve, I believe we have probably a mixed audience here, right? We have companies that may be directly involved in importing, and we may have individuals or companies that are middlemen or play a different role, but are still impacted by the tariffs. So what I talk about today, I'm going to be kind of general in what I say, but obviously I would like to have your questions as we move toward the end. And even after this webinar is over, feel free. Steve will share my email address. I get lots of emails, so I try to respond 24 to 48 hours in most cases. And if you have a more specific question, I'll be glad to answer that for you. So let's talk a little bit about what you need to do today. So I mentioned the fact that these IEEPA tariffs, a lot of money, and like I said, about 160 billion plus was collected, and now that money is being refunded. A lot of the large retailers, the Walmarts, Targets, and such, they've already filed their refund claims, and they may already be seeing some of those refunds coming back. I've assisted myself about 120 companies so far in filing their IEEPA claims, and we're starting to see those refunds be approved and processed. So depending on what your role is here, whoever was the importer, whoever was the party that paid these tariffs, they need to take action today so that they can recover the tariffs that they paid. The government is not going to automatically give this money back. If you paid it, you have to go through the process and apply for refunds. So it's critical you get that process started today. I think that should be item number one on your list. Find out how the duties were paid. If you're a sales rep and you represent a manufacturer, who was the importer of record? Did the manufacturer pay the duties, or was a U.S. party involved and they paid the duties? You want to be able to speak to those parties and make sure they understand they have to take action to get that money back. Some companies have come to me and said, oh, I just thought the government was going to send us back the money. Well, that's not how it works. And it is time barred as well. There are some time limits. In most cases, we've probably got 3 to 6 months to get those claims filed, but there may be instances where you have a shorter period of time. So that should be item number one on the list today, to see where those duties were paid and take steps to get those back.
Fantastic. Quick follow-up question. Where are you seeing companies make mistakes right now? Is it that they're just not fully prepared to do this and file those claims, or is that they're not ready? What what are the big roadblocks for them?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. As I said, there's a lack of awareness. Maybe I mean, a lot of people in the industry have heard that these tariffs were overturned, but they may not have heard that they have to take steps to recover them. So, I think that's a hot topic item that companies need to take action to do that. One of the other things is a company has to choose whether they're going to pursue that refund on their own through the Customs Ace portal, or they're going to use their customs broker or another uh, authorized party to file that refund claim for them. To touch on that a little bit, I just got a message from Customs right before our call. It went out to our brokerage community telling us to warn importers that there are some phishing attempts out there. Companies saying we can get your refunds back faster and trying to get your personal information or your company's information and maybe do some fraudulent things. Only the importer of record or a licensed customs broker can pursue those refunds. So don't allow some third party into your company records to assist you, because it may not even be legal that they're doing it, or it could even be fraudulent. So I think, twofold: recognize you have to take action to get the money back, and make sure you're working with a party you trust to assist you through that process.
Okay, and Steve, I think you kind of addressed my next talking point about just how it's impacting businesses and how they should be thinking about it right now. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to skip ahead to my next.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wanted to shift gears and bring it down kind of to the reps perspective. So knowing that a big part of our audience may be sales reps who are sitting on the front of or sitting in front of retailers every day, and they're the ones who are having to explain exactly what's happening. So, Steve, if you were a rep walking into a retail customer's store this week, how would you frame that conversation with your retail partners to help educate them and make sure that they're ready too?
Yeah, I think it's critical. When a rep goes in and meets with a retailer, they're likely representing a manufacturer or a group of manufacturers. These retailers are just as aware as, through the news outlets, of the fact that this tariff was overturned as you are. The retailer maybe was not the importer of record. They bought it through a manufacturer, they bought it through a middleman importer, but they paid that tariff. It was added in that price. So I think one question that reps are going to face when they go into a retail customer is, do you know if the importer has filed for those refunds, and how do you plan to share or reimburse that refund to us? That's going to be a sensitive discussion, because as we all know, and from talking to companies that I deal with that are direct importers in the furniture industry, they tell me they didn't pass on all of the tariff. They passed on a part of it. The buyer may have covered a part of it. I'm sorry, the manufacturer may have covered a part of it. And then ultimately, the middleman, the importer, may have taken some of that as a loss and not even passed it on to the end customer. So how do you negotiate through all that? It's going to be challenging. If you're a rep and you represent a company that is a direct importer, I think you need to have that conversation with them and just say, hey, we know that the tariffs were overturned. Have you started the process of recovering those tariffs? Because it's going to be a business opportunity and also a business challenge in how you communicate that with your end customers.
Yeah, I think you're right. We talk about it a lot here at IFRA, is that the role of the rep has really evolved, and you can't just wear one hat anymore. And it seems like today, anyway, sometimes it's less about selling and more about educating your customers and trying to help them make those better decisions. help them understand what's happening. It's providing a solution and education rather than just an order. So as we look for the silver lining in this, one thing I wanted to make sure we don't lose sight of, Steve, is like in a market like this, there's usually always some sort of opportunity. Where are you seeing companies or reps actually win right now?
Well, I think what I've heard, and I think it's true with a lot of challenges we face. I mean, I'm a small business owner as well. I've owned my company for 22 years now. The challenge is to when we're hit with these types of issues that come up like the tariffs, how do we react to that? And how do we see not only a challenge we have to overcome, but possibly a way to stand out from our competition? So I think the key is going to be knowing your retail customers. You've had conversations with them over the years. I'm sure tariffs have come up over the last year and a half. People complaining because prices are rising and, wanting to know how your pricing to that retailer is reflecting these new tariffs. So I think if you can open that conversation with them, it builds a layer of trust there. Because there are a lot of companies that have no plans on refunding any money to their customers. Steve, you and I think, talked offline about this, that, there may be opportunities, and I've heard of how some companies are approaching this, where they're saying to their customers, all right, we are getting some of these tariffs back. We didn't charge them all to you back over the last, 14 months or so, but we're willing to give you this one-time discount on your next order. Use it as a sales tool. It's an opportunity. For us as a broker, we've taken it as an opportunity to reach out to the trade community and give them a lot of advice. And a lot of times I give advice I never really hear again from the people. We try to help them, but they've been with the same broker for 20 years. They don't want to change. I get that. But, for us, we're going to keep communicating and look at it as an opportunity to set ourselves apart as a broker that understands this process and tariffs going forward as well. But if you can initiate that conversation with your customers rather than them approaching you, I think it puts you in the driver's seat.
Okay, and I think I'm going to jump ahead. All right, so no one's got that magic, that crystal ball, right? We can't see into the future, but as we do look forward, what should everyone that's on this call be paying attention to over the next 30, 60, 90 days?
Yeah, I think it's important that you stay tuned into what's going on with customs in the U.S. International Trade Administration. As I said, there are new investigations that are ongoing on a tariff called a 301 tariff. That tariff has already been upheld by the courts previously. It's been used on China since 2018. It's been challenged in court and so far has stood the challenge. So if new tariffs were to be rolled out under that Section 301, likely they're going to be paid and not recovered in the future. So, I would prefer to give you a rosy picture of what's coming next, right? We've gone through this 14-month period of tariffs. It's been pretty trying for all of us. I'd love to give you good news, but I think you need to be alert to the changes. I try to communicate with my customers on a weekly basis through an email blast I send out. And I just say, hey, here's some topics that I think might interest you. And, it's easier to deal with challenges when you see them coming versus getting hit upside the head on a Monday morning with a challenge. So I think stay tuned to what's going on, rely on parties. I'd be happy to share my news blast with you. There's no obligation or anything. Just add your email to the list, share that with you, and stay tuned to other news sources as well. Customs and tariffs and duties was always kind of a boring topic because prior to 2018, for furniture, the duty rate was pretty much free worldwide. If you were importing furniture into the United States, it was duty free. There were a few exceptions, bedroom furniture from China and things like that, but it was narrow. So no one really talked about duty and tariff because it was such a minimal part of the equation. Now it can be a big chunk of the cost. So stay tuned and keep your ears open. And, like I said, sign up for the newsletter. I'd be glad to add you.
Fantastic. All right. So what I wanted to do today was leave as much time as we could to make sure that anyone that was on this call had time to ask questions. Because I think I'm going to jump in and start and say, what is the best source of information if I, as a rep, am looking at a new product line that I'm thinking about carrying, and I want to know exactly what sort of duties and tariffs and everything else I might be up against by taking on this line as it sits today. Is there one or two resources that you can recommend directly if I wanted to be either product and or country specific?
Yeah, there are some pay to use type websites that offer tariff analysis. I would say if you're not comfortable with the harmonized tariff and understanding the classification of products, you'd be far better off speaking to a broker, a licensed customs broker. We answer probably, I don't know, 20 to 30 tariff questions every day. And they pretty much come in 7 days a week. So I don't mind, if someone wants to reach out to me, but if you have a broker you're already using, they should be a good resource for you as well. You have to be sure your tariff classification is correct. So the reason I'm always cautious about people using the online tools, like even chat, chat will help you classify a product, but tariff classification can be very tricky. And if you get it wrong, everything's wrong. Your duty rates are wrong. Your customs requirements are wrong. It can really open up a lot of headaches. And it's funny, in the last 6 months especially, I get a lot of people reach out to me and said, here's what Chat GPT said. And, it doesn't agree with what you're saying. And then I have to try to tell them, one, I did research it a little more. And, normally, chat's a good tool. We use it at times as well. But when it comes to tariff classification and the pricing of your products, I would reach out to a professional and get that advice.
Fair enough. You and I, again, we were talking offline before this call, and we were talking about how even with the IEEPA tariffs being ruled unconstitutional, odds are it's we might be done with this one, but there could be others coming. Can you explain the different mechanisms that the administration is thinking about using, and what that could look like? Or, I know you and I talked about the USMCA, and that's due, that's up for renegotiation, and what that, again, knowing that you can't predict the future.
Sure.
What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think, well, let's touch on a couple things. You mentioned the mechanism behind, or the law behind these tariffs, right? So Congress is charged with tariffs. They're the ones that are to review tariffs, trade, treaties, all these types of things. But Congress has assigned to the president a number of authorities under which a president can institute duties, either short term or longer term, without congressional approval. So it's like a standing approval, I guess you could say. The IEEPA tariffs, the reason they were found unconstitutional is because they were the IEEPA Act that Congress passed and gave authority to the president, gave the president authority to do things like embargo imports, not tariff them. That was the fine line that was drawn there. So these other tariff mechanisms have stood the test of time pretty much. I know there are always court challenges, but I don't think they'll be successful. So we currently have a 10%, what's been called a universal tariff, that applies to almost every imported product from almost every country of origin. That tariff took effect in April, I believe it was April. and is due to expire in July, late or latter half of July. It's 150 days, and then it's done. What happens at that point, we don't know. It could be brought right back to life under new wording. We're in kind of a wild west a little bit. We don't really know. The 232 tariffs, which a lot of furniture importers know about, because the metal tariff heavily impacts importers of outdoor furniture in particular, and the upholstered furniture tariff impacts a lot of companies that import chairs, sofas, and such. Those tariffs are based in the law. They'll probably stand. If there are negotiations between the U.S., probably bilateral versus unilateral negotiations. I think there'll be bilateral agreements with different countries that will possibly reduce some of those metal tariffs or the upholstered furniture tariff. And then the 301 tariffs are kind of frightening because they've been held up by the courts. If you import furniture, you probably know about the 25% 301 tariff that's been in effect since 2018, covers a wide range of furniture products. These other 301 tariffs are very ambiguous in the way they're formulated. One of them is to address the use of forced labor in the supply chain. And that impacts quite a few countries, even Canada, where the U.S. is saying these countries have to show that forced labor is not being used in the products that they ultimately ship to the U.S. The other one's an even broader attack that says we're looking at countries that have excess manufacturing capacity in certain commodities. And if they do, we may put in a place a tariff to offset their advantage. First time we've been down this path, so I don't know where it ends, but these are open investigations with the U.S. International Trade Representative's Office. I think they're supposed to give their reports to the president in July, and then it's up to the president how he reacts. Does he want to impose tariffs across the board on certain products? Is it going to be a narrow scope? Is it going to be narrow in the country of origin? Yeah, like I said, this year, I wish I could say that tariff uncertainty was over now that the Supreme Court overturned the one, but that's just not true. So stay tuned.
Fair enough. Yeah, a question did come in, and you touched on a lot of it, but I'm going to ask it anyway just to make sure that it's addressed. And again, if anyone does have questions, please add it to the chat or feel free to unmute and just jump right in, I think. But it was asked, can you expand upon the upholstery tariff a little bit? We import case goods from Vietnam. Does a simple cushioned seat making up 10% of the product automatically throw it into the 25% tariff category? Or is there materiality, I can't speak today, threshold like metal? Yeah, this is one I've heard several times before, where it's a wooden chair, but you've got the upholstered seat on it. How do you handle that, or how does your firm handle that?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. So we all know, I think, or some of us know, that we're impacted by them. When the metal tariffs came out, aluminum and steel in particular, that impacted the furniture industry, there were percentages involved. So you only paid duty, it was either a 25 or a 50% duty, but you only paid it on the value of the metal. Well, that became a circus, to be honest. Customs said it was being totally abused. Companies were under declaring metal value. They were using shady accounting. It was not good. So they redid the metals to say, we're going to base it on the tariff number, and the percentage of duty that's being assessed is on the entire value of the goods. We don't care if it's 10% metal or 90% metal. It's going to go on the full value of the goods based on the tariff classification. So for the upholstered goods, that same rule applies. If your product is properly classified under the harmonized tariff as an upholstered chair, let's say, even if the upholstery makes up a very small percentage of the overall product, If it's an upholstered chair, it's going to be subject to the 25% on the full value. Now, there are some very narrow exclusions in the metals tariff. As of right now, I don't know of any exclusions in the upholstery 25% tariff. The question becomes, is your product classified correctly? It's unusual. So again, if you've got an upholstered good, it's 10% of the product is the cushion seat. The 90% of the value is the frame and the rest of the components. Why does the 25% apply on the whole product? It's because that is tied to the harmonized tariff classification. And if a chair has an upholstered seat, even if it's a small percentage of the value, that chair falls under the upholstered chair tariff classification, and therefore they pay that 25% additional duty.
Okay. I'm looking to see, I haven't seen any other questions, so I'm going to keep rocking and rolling here unless anyone, please feel free to jump in with their own. But Steve, I just had a quick question about, let's say best case scenario happens, the importer of record does get a refund. So if a tariff drove the price increases, maybe that a retailer paid, right? So tariffs take effect, brands raise their prices because of the tariffs that they are ultimately going to pay. They end up having to pass some of that on to their retail customers. If and when those tariff refunds are issued, who should benefit from that? Are you hearing any stories about, should it be the importer? Should it be the retailer? Do we think prices are going to go back down to the end consumer? It's such a slippery slope, but
it is. I mean, there are actually class action suits that I've heard of where consumers at the level of people that bought product from Walmart or Costco or Target are suing those corporations saying, you got back this tariff, we should get back our share. I think the court, I don't want to speak for the court, but I don't know how the court could even come to a decision that made sense. Because again, as I said early on, a lot of my customers, when I talk to them about the tariff as it increased, right, the supplier was going to eat part of that increase and not increase the product. The importer was going to take part of that increase as a loss rather than pass it on. So if you got, a company that got hit with a 25% additional tariff, maybe 5% stayed with the supplier and he paid it. The importer may have taken 5%. So ultimately, maybe only 15% increase to the price got passed on to the consumer. How do you ever account for that? Because that may not have been a set policy from day one. It may have varied over time. So it's going to be challenging. Again, I think what it boils down to is what is your business relationship with your end customers, right? You don't want to make your end customers angry and take their business away. So I think you've got to listen to what they're saying and have a solid response, basically saying, we are getting back the tariff, but we only passed on this percentage of it to you. Therefore, we're going to do X, whatever that might be. Maybe it's a one-time credit to their account. Maybe it's some sort of percentage reduction on product for a certain period of time. I think if you do this smartly, I think you can use it as a tool to drive more sales in versus drive potentially customers away because they feel like, you weren't honest with them. It's something we've really not faced before, not in this industry. The whole refunding all these tariffs, customs had to build an entire system in 45 days to be able to process these refunds outside of their normal processes, which would have bogged their system down where it couldn't even operate. So they were able to do it. So far, it's held up. We've only seen it drop on us a few times over the last few weeks, but Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is we're in such a new world. You just need to be creative. But I think it is important, rather than waiting for your customers to come to you and complain and want some sort of compensation, maybe you come up with a plan and go to them, because I think it would be naive to think people haven't heard about the tariffs and haven't heard they were overturned.
Fair point. We just had another question get asked in the chat. Where can we get definitive receipts for how much was paid to CBP for tariff, duty, etc.? Will our brokers have the breakdown?
That's a great question. And actually, I'll answer it in two parts because does have two pieces to it. So if your company only used one customs broker during this whole IEEPA timeframe, that customs broker has access to U.S. Customs ACE system, where customs keeps all the tariff and shipment detail. That broker can pull down a report. I do this every day. Pull down a report. They can sort out which tariffs out of all the tariffs you paid were IEEPA tariffs and which were other tariffs. And that way you'll know approximately how much money you should be getting back. If you use multiple brokers, which companies do that, it would be best for you to set up your own ACE account with customs. As an importer, you can do that. It's free. It can be a bit of a headache to set it up, but you can do it all online. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, you'll have to get the help desk involved. But if you're an importer of record, or you're speaking with a company you work with that's an importer of record, they can log into ACE, set up their own account. And as soon as that account goes live, they'll be able to see all their import data. And a lot of times it'll date back 5 or 10 years if they want to look back that far. The other thing for importers, and I'm directing this to them, there is a second step. Even if another party files your refund claims, like your broker files them for you, you still have to set up an ACE account, because customs is no longer issuing refund checks. Everything is being done through ACH, and you have to set up your bank information in your ACE portal. And that way, when your refunds are approved, the money will come to your account electronically. Without that, the money will stay in customs hands until you resolve it. They will not write checks.
Thank you, Steve. I want to make sure I pause for a moment and give everyone else an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have, or anything that's on their mind. And if I don't hear anything in a couple of minutes, we'll close this out. But again, feel free to ask your question in the chat, or just unmute and join the conversation.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to Steve. And if you want to be added to my email blast, that's not a problem to do. I won't hit you with sales pitches and all that. It's not a newsletter in the fancy sense like some companies send. It is an email with bullet points. I like to cut through it. We don't have time to read a bunch of flashy things. It'll tell you, here's what's going on and why it might be important to you. And then if you have specific questions, I always encourage people, send me an email and I'll respond, as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. All right. I'm going to say last call for questions, and I'll wait to see if anyone jumps in or jumps on it. But in the meantime, thank you again, Steve, for making time, and thanks everyone that took time out of their day to just stay informed and make sure that we're all supporting our retail customers, our importers, and ourselves. Right? It's definitely not a wait and see environment anymore. So for the sales reps that are here and the ones who are going to win this market, it's not the ones with the best sales pitch anymore. The ones who help their customers make the best decisions. So just keep that in mind as you take that out into your territories and on your travels. But again, Steve, we really appreciate all of your time, your insights today. Definitely, y'all, when I send out this recording and the follow-ups, I'll include Steve's email. He really does have an incredibly informative newsletter. And just like you said, it's very direct to the point. Um, so it's definitely worth the 2 seconds it would take to send them a note to sign up for it. So
Absolutely.
awesome. So with that, I guess we'll say thanks everybody, and we appreciate you supporting Steve and supporting us and IFRA and being a part of our association. We couldn't do it without you, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye
Thank
now.
you.